welcome to my Crafters Log number 4. This is the Autumn 2025 edition, and I'm officially calling it All My Stitches, because my attempts to, actually get things done sometimes feels like a soap opera. A rather boring soap opera, but just as drawn out. So... anyway, that's probably why I couldn't get the soap opera related titles off my brain. So frankly, this one is probably, I don't have a lot to show for it. I did have to make a list of what I want to talk about, so I've got my list here I'm going to be referring to. For those of you who are new to this series, this is my semi-annual accounting for all the things that I have been up to behind the scenes of my regular videos. So, you know, personal projects and things of that nature. This series is kind of shifting now, though, from what I originally intended it to be. Initially, I had wanted to find some long-term background projects that I could do when I was not able to film. And so I went through and I set up and started a whole bunch of different projects. But over time, each one of them has kind of fallen by the wayside because I have been remembering why I was always a very monogamous crafter. And that is that if I don't focus on the one project at a time, I can't finish anything. And because I'm trying to make videos of my projects, that's the project that always takes priority. And I just end up never having time for these other projects. And, you know, even if I have the time, I just don't have the bandwidth. So there's not a whole lot to show for regarding the pre-established projects in this series, but there are a couple things that I can still talk about. You know, I do get rather chatty, so I encourage you to grab a project that you are working on, maybe a nice beverage. I have some tea because I already had too much coffee today, and we're just gonna hang out. And we'll talk a little bit about what I've done since spring and touch on what I hope to do in the coming few months. So firstly, I was planning on doing this video in October because that's when I did the previous ones, the previous autumn edition, I believe. But I am running really far behind on finishing the project for the video that I was hoping to release at this time instead. Surprise, surprise. In my last video, I think we learned a lot about where all my time goes. If you watched my walk away dress video, I learned a lot about how I use my time or fail to use my time in an efficient manner. And, you know, the thing is, I know that that is pretty much how I am all the time. I don't need footage to extract that, to know that that's how I always am. And that video, that's just showing you how I am when I am actively trying to get something done. That doesn't even account for the moments when I can't even get started. So, yeah, we're moving this video up, and oh, another exciting milestone. I mean, this is going to be the case for every Autumn Crafters Log, but we have reached another anniversary for this channel. So I have now been doing this for 3 years, which is kind of amazing to me that I'm still going, but it's still not quite what I initially envisioned, which is kind of a shame. I still don't really have the capacity to make it what I want, but we're just gonna keep plugging away. Maybe I'll get there eventually. But you know, we're gonna be starting season 4 here pretty soon, and that's pretty darn good. You know, I don't know. I just wanted to mention that. All right. So where are we gonna begin? Let's start with talking about some of the things that I discussed last time. Now, broadly speaking, there's really no project that I can show you. In my previous crafter's log, in my spring 2025 edition, I did pretty much conclude that there was only one of those established projects that you were likely to see any progress on. And while I have done a little bit of work on that, that was my English paper piecing, like 90s Victorian kind of style print, hexagon quilt thing. While I have done a few stitches on that, it's not even worth showing you because you're not gonna see enough of a difference. So I don't actually have any project to show you any progress on. And that feels really absurd that I haven't touched any of these things in the last 6 months. But you know, I'm always trying to get other things done, and they just have not been a priority. And I think because I have so many now, like on the go, I have so many works in progress going, they're just kind of all stacked on top of each other. So even though they're like literally right here, well, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like they're all right here, but because they're all stacked up, like I can't grab what I want on a whim. I usually have to work on whatever project I'm doing for a video. And then it's specifically the case with the English paper piecing, I actually need my glasses off to see up close. And that means it's not something I can do while watching TV. So I just never grab it. Now, if I could have my glasses like mounted up here so I could like look at the TV and then down here up close, like that would be brilliant. But I can't do that. I envy the people who can do this and like see the TV far away and then see up close. Anyway, so there's not really much progress to show you on any of those things. Also in that crafter's log, I brought up the idea of memberships for this channel, and it pretty much became immediately evident that I am not ready for prime time. This channel is not ready for prime time when it comes to the idea of memberships. So that is on the back burner. Whether there's enough interest or not, I really have concluded that at this point in time, I don't have the routine or the schedule or, you know, time availability to be consistent with any kind of offering. And so I'm going to revisit that at some point in the future, but I'm not going to worry about it for right now. If you do want to support this channel, I do always have a Ko-fi page linked down in the description. I'm not really doing anything with that at the moment. I haven't been like promoting it or putting anything on it. But, you know, if you ever feel like you want to give me a tip or buy me a coffee, that is always down there. No pressure. It's just nice to know that it's there, I guess. But anyway, there is one other project, however, that we are going to dive a bit deeper into. So one of my established projects was a granny hexagon cardigan that I was going to make for myself in Lion Brand Kobu yarn. And I had decided that I really wasn't happy with the color order, but I also was troubled by the unequal use of the different colors. So when you've got, you know, a granny square or a granny hexagon, in this case, the colors you use in the middle, you use very little of. And then you use progressively more of each color, but I had the same quantity of each color. So not only was I not liking the way it looked with the green that I had started with, and the color order that I ended up with, I also just couldn't figure out how to make that color distribution work with the quantity of yarn that I had. So I will say though, seeing it on screen, apart from the green, like I did actually really fall in love with the stripes that I had. A lot more watching the footage back than I did in person. But regardless, I frogged the whole thing, and I am now kind of trying to make a new plan. I still want to make a granny stitch cardigan with that yarn. But now I'm trying to make a plan for how I can utilize the colors more evenly. And I did actually make a little test. Now, this was a practice test just to see about like if the concept could work, and it's not going to show up very well on screen because it's tiny and because it's a variegated yarn. But I made this like Barbie sized little test piece. So basically what I'm going to try to do is have the like granny shape in the L shape around the front, but then instead of doing two pieces that seam up the back, I'm going to try and go straight across the back. So basically, I can't remember where I started, but we're going around and down the corner, around the back, but then all the way across and around to the front, and then up over the shoulder, around the sleeve. And then I think it's going back and forth. I don't remember exactly. I'll have to unravel it. But when I get it more ironed out and really get started, like I'll be able to demonstrate that a little more clearly in future crafters logs. But that's what I think I'm going to try to do with that Kobu yarn, is like a granny style cardigan, but I think going straight across the back will use colors a little more evenly. So that's kind of where I'm at with that granny cardigan. However, I did actually make a complete granny hexagon cardigan. After I ripped that one out, I had decided I didn't want to use that green anymore. And then my kid brother announced that they were expecting a baby. And so I had the idea that, you know what, why don't I just make a baby size granny hexagon cardigan? So they had the baby shower back in July. So of course I don't have it to show you. I do have a few pictures that I'll show you that we'll go through. These pictures were taken before I sewed the buttons on, because I sewed the buttons on in the car on the way to the baby shower. So for this baby hexagon cardigan, I used the green, the russet color, which is one of the colors that is still available in the store, so I could get more for my own cardigan. And then I think it's tan is the brown that I used, and that's also one that I can get more of. I decided to do a spike stitch instead of a regular granny, so that there would be so that there wouldn't be big holes for little baby fingers to get caught in. I do wish that I had done a triple crochet for that spike as opposed to just elongating it, because I didn't understand how that was going to pull and like make the corners of the cardigan like pointy. But it's small enough. I think, you know, it's probably fine. I don't know when baby is going to wear this. I don't know what size it is. But it is, you know, cotton and bamboo, so hopefully the season won't matter so much. So what else did I do with this cardigan? I did try to do a knit button band and neckline, and I really liked the way that looked in and of itself, but I did not know how to get it around to the neck properly. I probably needed to like make some increases or some other kind of shaping, and I just really ran out of time to figure out how to do that. So I had to rip the knitted ribbing back out, and I did a single crochet button band that I ended right here with a little bit of a taper, so that kind of gives the illusion of a little bit of a curve around the neckline. I didn't want to add a whole lot of extra, like, because usually I think they, to create a neckline in these hexagon cardigans, I think people add an extra strip down the center back, and I really didn't want to do that. One of the other things that I wanted to achieve while doing this was I wanted to keep the color order, and I didn't want there to be any like extra stripes around the, you know, cuff or the waist or anywhere. I wanted the same colors to go all the way around. So in the granny hexagon cardigan, you've got one edge coming down here, another that goes around the waist, an edge coming up the back. There's an edge that goes down the arm, another one around the wrist, and another one up the arm. And so as you add more to these edges, the sleeves get bigger and bigger. And I really didn't want the sleeves to be too big. It's kind of in general, one of the things that I don't particularly like about the granny hexagon cardigan. So one of the things I did to kind of mitigate that was for these 3 edges, the 2 here and the one around the wrist, I actually switched to single crochet instead of the double crochet that I continued using on the other 3 edges. And I did, what did I do? So for the arms, for the tops of the arms, I did a single crochet and chain 1 to keep those stitches shorter, but just as long. And then around the wrist, I eliminated the chain so that it could start cinching in at the wrist. I then picked up some stitches and knit the cuffs. And then I also wanted to keep the color order going for the seaming, and I wanted to keep that flat. So I didn't want to like do a chain or a single crochet join. I'm not very well practiced in crochet joins, and I didn't really know how to get what I wanted while keeping the color there. So what I ended up doing was a slip stitch join in a zigzag, and then I maintained the spike stitch in that zigzag, in which some of these slip stitches are a little bit longer because I'm reaching in a little further. So it's not exactly even, but I do think it kind of has an interesting look to it. So I was pretty pleased with that. And then one additional note is the buttons. There are only 2 buttons. I would have preferred 3, but the reason there are 2 is I have a whole bunch of my grandma's buttons. My maternal grandmother didn't do a whole lot of sewing, but I have a ton of her buttons that my mom gave me. And so I thought it would be really special to include some of her buttons on her, great grandchild's cardigan. But there weren't any in sets of 3 that matched. So that is the end of my granny hexagon cardigan saga, because I feel sated now with that. I have made a granny hexagon cardigan, and I do not feel the need to make another one for myself. I do, like I said, want a granny stitch cardigan with that same yarn, but it's going to be a different pattern that's just going to emulate the vibe, but not be an actual hexagon. I do have one other finish, actually also for the baby. Before I decided to make the cardigan, I made the baby a hat. The first 2 pair of socks that I knit were for my little brother and his wife. My sister-in-law, I showed her my stash that I got one time, and she commented on this sock yarn that I had 2 skeins of. I didn't really have any use for it in mind. It was part of a mystery yarn box that I got myself for my birthday one year. And she commented on liking it, so I made them each a pair of socks out of it. I still had more, so I decided to make the baby a matching hat. I did look for a vintage knitting pattern for this. I knew I wanted to knit it, and I also wanted to knit it in the round. And although I do have a couple of vintage baby hat patterns, none of them were for knitting in the round. So I did use some modern patterns, some free patterns off of Ravelry, and I say patterns, plural, because I mixed 2 together. So the primary portion of this hat is the, the Mala, I don't know how to say this word. I think it's a Hawaiian word. Mala, I don't know. The beanie. It had a garter stitch hem. I didn't want to do that. I changed it to a folded hem, but I used that pattern for the lacework design. Then I wasn't too keen on the look of the decreases. So for the decreases, I used baby stuff. And I did have to do quite a bit of math and finagling because they're different gauges and different counts. And I was also aiming to make this hat fit the baby at, 3 to 6 months. The baby was born just a few weeks ago. I looked up online how big that should be, and I did actually end up with a hat in the dimension, the circumference that I aimed for, but I forgot about the part where it was probably going to want negative ease. So I think the hat might be toddler size. I don't know if the baby's going to actually be able to wear this anytime soon, or if it will fit when it's actually cold enough to need a hat. But I made it. And I think it turned out pretty well. I wish I had something round that was big enough to like photograph the hat on so you could see the whole shape and see what it looks like. But we'll just have to wait and see if it ever fits baby and if they send me a picture of baby's head with the hat on. So I do have those two finishes. Those are all my stitches. That's not a lot of stitches. But I did feel pretty accomplished that I got 2 baby gifts done for 1 shower. While I haven't been picking up my works in progress, I haven't been picking up these projects, I have been doing something else craft related with my spare time. I have been adding all of my vintage patterns into a database. I initially would have preferred to use Ravelry for this, but so many of my vintage pattern books are just not in there. So I can't just add the pattern, I have to add the source as well. You can't always add pictures of the patterns because there might be a copyright issue. It's really a headache to add them to Ravelry. And so I've been using Notion. I've been creating my own knitting pattern database there. And it's much easier. I can add pictures more easily and without having to worry about copyright because it's just for me. And it is going to take me a very, 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 very long time because I have a lot of knitting patterns. I'm going through each book and adding every single one, and crochet as well, although I don't have nearly as many. So my eventual goal is to be able to use this database along with a database of my yarn stash so I can put the two together and work out what yarn to use for what pattern. There might be times where there's a pattern that I really want to do and I have to find yarn for it, but I also have yarn that is really special and I want to find the right pattern that will utilize that yarn and showcase that yarn, and also where I have enough of that yarn, because the vast majority of my yarn stash is actually vintage and finite. So when I plan out my projects for how to use this yarn, I need to know that it's going to be enough, or, I always have a contingency plan of what other yarn I can supplement and where in a pattern it could go. So I feel like the more patterns I have in my knitting database, the more easily I can kind of visualize how that yarn can be used. So right now, how many do I have entered in here? 258 knitting patterns I have entered into this database, and I think I've only gone through like a stack that big, and I probably have at least this many more. There's also all of the knitting patterns in my bigger books and instructional books that I always forget are in there. So I think it's going to be really helpful to also add that into my database. I do already have all of my books in their own database because I'm a bit of a database nerd. I've cataloged my books and my library. I've cataloged my puzzles. It's a hobby that I have, that I catalog all of these things anyway. So yeah, I should be a librarian, but it's not a safe time for librarians right now. Anyway, so yeah, that is what I have been working on in lieu of my actual craft projects. So eventually I do want to do videos where we'll go through and, you know, plan out some of these knitting projects. But for the moment, I'm just trying to get this database established. So what else might you like to know about that database? Now, I am doing that in Notion. If that's something that interests you, that you want to see a template for when I get it like fully ironed out, because I am still making changes as I add more patterns. I see different ways I need to use this. You know, let me know. Maybe I can share a Notion template at some point. But, you know, most of you, especially if you do modern patterns, Ravelry is probably sufficient for that. So that pretty much, I think, sums up what I have been working on, or not, apart from the things that are parts of videos. So now let's talk about what I hope to work on this fall and winter. Firstly, I do have a couple of secret projects that I can't really discuss in great detail because they're like secrets, and they'll probably have videos made for them anyway, so you would see them there. But I do have a kind of epic gift that I'm trying to make, and the friend I'm making this for does occasionally watch my videos, so I don't even want to say what craft it is because that might give away at least part of what this gift is. But I have been testing out for how to make that. And there's a technique that I need to work on and practice so that I can achieve that. So I have been working on that a little bit. And then I also have another sweater that I want to make as a gift for a famous person, which I haven't sent anything to a celebrity since, you know, high school. When I had stupid teenage girl crushes on, you know, actually I think it was a soap opera actor. I sent him a 4-leaf clover. It's fine. It's nothing. But so I want to make this sweater for this famous person, kind of as a thank you gift for helping me keep my sanity in these insane times. And I'll make a video of that. I do have some vintage books I'm going to use to help me make that. I was really hoping to do that this November as a video. I don't know that I'm going to have time for it though, but that is one thing that I'm going to be planning for. I don't have any supplies. I haven't figured out the design yet. It's just a concept. And I think I'm only bringing it up because it's an example of how I keep getting more and more ideas of what I want to make, but I don't get more time to make them. You know, I don't know. I'm also trying to figure out what Craftmas projects I can make. Again, I don't know how much time or how many Craftmas videos I'll have time for this year. Last year I was only able to do 4. The year before was like peak Craftmas, but I don't know. And a lot of things just feel like they're up in the air, but that's one of the things that I'm trying to work on. I do also really want to get back to some of the projects that I had kind of put to the side. So like my granny square mitts, I didn't want to work on over the summer. I've got a lot of projects that I started and then put down when it got too warm to want them. So I do want to see if I can get back to those. Yeah, I have on my list that I would really like to create plans for all of my yarn, as I already discussed, which is why I've been working on this database. So that is another, you know, big thing on my brain, but I feel like I need to get everything out in front of me, and get really organized. And right now, like, too many of my things just don't have homes. You know, things are just kind of sitting here and sitting there, and you like put it away, but there is no away. I don't know. I can't get organized here. So I don't even know if it's even worth mentioning. Let's see. Dare I mention the stitch along? Yeah. So I've been talking about this Memphis Milano stitch along, needlepoint stitch along for like 2 years now. I have started it. And again, it's one of those things where I always end up needing to prioritize my next video because while it's a stitch along and I would actually prefer to release the videos and stitch them along with you, I can't really do that because I want to show you the finished piece before you commit to doing it with me. This isn't a mystery stitch along. I could show you the drawing of it, but I'm figuring out the stitches for it as I go. And so I kind of need to finish the whole thing before I can start putting out those videos. And it's just been really hard to prioritize that. But one of the things that held me up for the longest time was figuring out how to stabilize my my stand and my camera. And I did at least figure that out. It does mean I have to sit awkwardly on a table while stitching. And that is another reason why I can't ever prioritize working on it, because I'm like sitting on a table in the living room to do this. And I can't always work in that living room. But once I get some of my bigger video projects done, hopefully I'll be able to focus on that. Like I'm nearing the end of Barbie. I finally did the walkaway dress. I feel like there's something else that was kind of like big and promised. But anyway, I'm chipping away and hopefully I can get back to that pretty soon. So what else do I have on this list? I do also have another granny square project that every time I do a crafter's log, I think, should I include this granny square project and show that to you here? Or am I actually going to end up being able to make a video of it? I work on it so infrequently that I don't know that I will end up with enough footage of it. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, there is another granny square project. It's sitting right here next to me underneath my English paper piecing project and a knitting project and my current video project. Yeah, it's buried. And that's a stash busting project also. So, but yeah, I haven't touched it in months and months and months. So I don't know. May never be a video. If it's not, then I'll show it to you in one of these, I guess. So yeah, I think that's it. I still haven't worked on any more of the flowers from my Posy pillow top. Although I have been checking for more of that white yarn every now and then. What else? I can't believe that Toby has been just sleeping this whole time. Hi, buddy. Aww. I have on here personal life. I haven't really ever talked about anything personal in these logs before, and I know a lot of times some people do, or at least talk to you about, you know, something they've been up to, maybe things they've been watching. My life is not really that exciting, but I have been trying to figure out things that I can watch while crafting, and my big issue is to watch things I don't have to pay attention to, so I end up watching things I've watched before. So lately I rewatched all of the Star Trek movies, and I'm now rewatching Star Trek The Next Generation, and holy moly, like the first 3 seasons I had pretty much no memory of, and yes, they're cheesy, but they are so beautifully 80s. Like, ignore the plot, ignore that it's supposed to be a spaceship, just look at the set as 80s interior design, and I've really been appreciating that. And like there's shelves, like I need these shelves, like I know they exist somewhere, and like I don't know. Although also the costume choice of matching the dress to the tights to the shoes, like all the same color, like that's something else. I also did go back and rewatch all of the Alien movies so that I can watch Alien Earth, but I have to wait until a moment when I can like actually be able to focus on the show and not feel like I'm distracted from the project that I have to get done. I am a binger. If I start a new show, I will not do anything except watch that show until I'm done with it. So trying to be productive and watching new episodes of a new interesting show is a really bad combo for me. But hopefully once I get through my current project, and if I can get to my friend's present, like that's something I really won't have to pay attention to, and I'll be able to watch interesting things while doing that. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. And I think that's pretty much it for this crafters log. And stay tuned. Hopefully my next video, I'm really hoping it'll just be a week. Thank you so much for joining me. And let me know in the comments down below what you are working on. Any big finishes that you are really proud of. Any upcoming projects that you're really excited about. And what are you watching? Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you have a great day. And I will talk to you soon. Bye. You sure you don't want to get up, buddy? I am just astounded. He's been asleep this whole time. You can't even see him, can you?